to the Succeeding Over All Roadblocks Lifecast. I'm your host, Keisha Whitaker, transformational speaker, public relations strategist, and entrepreneur. I'm so excited to have the season premiere launching this February. The SOAR Lifecast is a podcast about self-discovery and vibrating higher in every area of your life. If you like what you see today, please like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, subscribe to the audio podcast, which you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. As I mentioned, February is Black History Month, and as with every episode, I am dedicated to honoring Black excellence everywhere I can find it. And this month, we will definitely be highlighting some people who are doing amazing, amazing things and honoring legends and people who are now at the front lines of making change in our society. I have an amazing guest for the season premiere, and you will not believe who it is. I'm so excited to introduce Miss Karyn Parsons, who is also known as Hilary Banks from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. After leaving acting behind, Karyn has gone on to found Sweet Blackberry, which is a nonprofit organization, but also creates a number of award-winning videos dedicated to helping ensure Black history and little-known figures are known throughout the schools and curriculums across the country. And she has done an amazing job of giving that knowledge to everyone. And so she's worked with a number of stars, from Chris Rock to Queen Latifah, Alfred Woodard have been a part of her projects. And so she's here today to talk about the work she's been doing since then, her body of work before that, and also definitely a roadblock, which is what we talk about on this show. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the author, the actress, and the activist, Karyn Parsons. Hi, Karyn.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining. I am so excited to have you for the season premiere.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm really happy you have me here. Thanks.
Well, I can't tell you how much I want to thank, first of all, my friend Brett Hoover, our mutual friend, who connected us. And so shout out to Brett.
Hi, Brett.
For this awesome opportunity to talk with you. And let's get into what's been going on in your life. I know, for one, I want to talk about the significance of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It was an absolutely groundbreaking show. I just watched the reunion not too long ago. It was so good, such a tearjerker. And I was like, wow, did not realize as we were watching it back then what the significance was, how important it has been to the culture, and how it continues to impact people worldwide. How do you feel about that?
Oh, well, I have to start off by saying that it's, I find it, I'm surprised, only in that I was, I was much younger and I wasn't looking at at what an impact the show was having. I wasn't aware of the impact that the show was having at the time. I don't think I could have known. I couldn't see its longevity. I couldn't see any of this, or let alone its relevance so many years later, decades later. But I have to say, over all of the years, meeting people and hearing their impressions of the show, how the impact the show had on them, people talking about the impact that the show had in our culture. I can't say enough how honored I am to have been a part of something like that, to have affected people, individuals. They go into life, and my contribution and the show itself are a part of them. I know what that's like because there are things that are that way for me as well. So the fact that I hold that place for some people in their lives, and like I said, in the culture, some kind of impact, I'm deeply honored. I'm deeply honored. And it's really wonderful to be able to look all these years later, to look back at it and say, wow, we really affected people. And not just brush it off. As for many years I always dismissed it as flattery. And it's so much more than that. It's not as simple as being flattered. And I am flattered, but it's far more than that. It's deeper than that. And I can't express enough how much it means to me, how much of an honor it is to have been a part of something like that.
Well, I can truly tell you that I rewatched some of it in preparation for this, and it really and truly captures the Black experience. I know from the Cosby Show, we saw families that, that was our first family that we saw as a Black family that had wealth and were professionals. And then Bel-Air took it to a next level of having a family that was one of wealth. You had a judge, you had a professor, you had the wealth and the means, and living in an affluent neighborhood like Bel-Air, which was probably unheard of, for at that time, other than like celebrities like OJ and people like that. But you think about the significance of that in the sense of, I guess it's showing where they came from and where they're going. Right. And so I love that the Black experience was shown from the standpoint of, you had Uncle Phil's parents who came down from the country where they talked about him slopping hogs as a kid. You talked about Aunt Viv living in the urban communities, and then Will coming in from Philly at that time, where Philly was kind of, a little rough. Yeah, a little rough. So that was real. And then bringing in the hip hop culture, which was then just growing and burgeoning at that time.
Absolutely.
And so it was just such a, microcosm of so many different things. And I was blown away watching it back to see how much was packed into that. And then not only that, but you saw class from a standpoint of Black families becoming upwardly mobile. So you have someone in the family who's made it, they have wealth, and then the relatives come in, Aunt Vi and all the aunts come, and you see that's the wealth was kind of the backdrop. It was more about the family dynamic to me that I noticed.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see the different ways that manifested, because it wasn't just one mono way of like, oh, Black person becomes wealthy, they become like this, they like this kind of thing. We were also different. Hillary's very different from Carlson. They both had their eccentricities, but he's this young Republican, and Hillary's just all about her vanity and herself and her own personal blind ambition. And then you've got Ashley, who's far more, obviously she's young, very young on the show, but this is somebody who's so bright, so intelligent, who's going to, as a woman, she's going to be at the top of her game. And you see where they all came from you also see where they all came from in terms of their guidance from their parents, like you said, this professor, mother, but you also saw the dance episode. So you got to see this whole other side of her where she was a dancer. And you see with Philip, he's a judge, but we saw that he was a lawyer before. And then, like you also said, that there were episodes where you saw his activism roots, and you saw his parents. So you saw how he grew up. And so like these evolution of people and characters, and as well as the aunties when they showed up, how different everybody was. And that was one of the things that I didn't recognize that the show was offering, was showing such a diverse cast of Black people. We didn't have a lot of shows. We had Cosby, which was huge. And we had Different World and Martin, that was around the same time as us. And it was really important, I think. In our show, it started off as just being so, it was funny. These different characters were opportunities for laughs, but there was more there. There was more going on, especially when you get to know them year after year, and you go through situations with them. You're dealing with different kinds of people, and that's what I hear back from people all the time. Is it was so great to see all these different Black people. They weren't just like, because we didn't see a lot of Black people on TV. So when you saw them, it was really refreshing, I think, to see like, you can be Carlton. This is somebody that you might recognize in your life, and wow, they're on television. And Ashley is somebody who you might aspire to be. And Hillary is hopefully somebody you don't aspire to be, but maybe that you recognize or recognize parts of yourself, et cetera, as well as, the parents and Jeffrey,
But I'll tell you, I saw Hillary in a different light. And when you talk about representation, we had a little bit more representation than most people, because I had a friend in France who told me that she was like, loved the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air because they didn't have hardly any Black representation on TV. And so you think about in the UK, it's huge still, in different countries, and people are picking it up like it's brand new. And
I know.
It's just, it's
that's
so
really
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
That's been something that's been great, is that this has been going on for, years now, but I'll meet somebody and they'll say, oh, it's so great because it was my favorite show and now it's my kid's favorite show. And then 10 years later, somebody says the same thing to me. And then 10 years later, somebody's saying this, so just generation after generation is picking it up, and it's becoming their favorite show all this time later. It has relevance. It has jokes that different levels of, the kids get, the parents get, and you get older, you get jokes you maybe didn't get before, so it's chock full of stuff. It's this, big fat onion, and it's fun. It keeps giving too. It's this gift that keeps on giving. It's great.
Yeah. And like I was saying about like the thing I saw about Hillary, which I thought was so cool. And actually I looked at Hillary kind of like she was a stereotype that we did not see.
No.
As black women and girls growing up. We never, like what they would call bougie. Like we never encountered that necessarily, or even knew Black girls who had that much, came from that much wealth, and then you were connected to celebrities, and really, to be honest with you, I look at Hillary. She had, to me, a lot of confidence. She went out and got what she wanted. She didn't let people tell her who she was and who she wasn't.
Yes.
I think there was a lot of great qualities about Hillary, and she may not have been as woke as people think she was, but there was an episode where you talked about global warming and explained it in detail. And then the lady was like, well, where can I donate? You're like, I don't know. It was so cute. But at the same time, you knew about that issue. So
I knew about,
it wasn't.
Yeah, I knew about the issue, but it was also, we were taking a big van. Everybody was loading into a big, van to go get there. That was a really fun. That was a really fun thing about that character, for sure.
Yeah. But that was just a dynamic, like I said, like not until like what Clueless came out and Stacey Dash played, the Valley Girl role in Clueless, but you were the original, that original role.
I remember
when brought to life.
When I started doing it, I remember thinking, it's funny people are reacting this way to her because she's really nothing that new. It's just that she's Black. It's a character we've seen, but we haven't seen a Black girl like that. And that was more the thing, I think, that had people thinking, and the writing, obviously the writing was great. I had great lines. I see some of the memes that are made out of the lines today, and I'm like, damn, that was a good line. But I'm with you on her confidence. And I used to have so much fun playing her. And a lot of the reason was because I got to, my mother brought me up to be very polite. And, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say anything at all, which is like the opposite of Hillary. And, so it was fun to kind of be bad. But I realized also what was really fun for me was her confidence. It felt good to slip into her. Judy Richmond, who was the costumer, used to say that Hillary showed up when I got dressed in the clothes, because she would see me and she'd see me change. She'd see my body language change as soon as I put the clothes on, and the affectations, and my physicality. And she's right, probably. But it was so fun to like zip up into this person who's very different from me. I wish I had the kind of confidence that Hillary had. I wish I could just zip it up like a big unitard and just like go out into the world with that kind of brazen ambition, confidence, no doubt that what you're after is the right thing and that everything's going to get out of the way for you. It was, that was fun. I mean, that's an element of her I would love to be able to bring into my life.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think once upon a time I was that person, and life happens, and
I do.
When you're young in your 20s and everything, you think you can conquer the world, and you don't.
It's easier to have that for sure.
Yeah. So I love just revisiting and looking at the show retrospectively and picking up all these nuanced things that we didn't even know we were picking up on. I think that's the power of media too, is that it's being presented to us in an entertainment format, but it's like, okay, we're really dealing with real serious issues here. We're dealing with the haves and have-nots. We're dealing with, so many different variables.
That's the brilliance of comedy. That's the beautiful Trojan horse of comedy, right? Is it just brings you, just come in laughing, and it has you just wide open, and then bam, it hits you like right in the gut with something very serious and recognizable, and that hits a true note, and you have to deal with the truth.
Yeah, and it was something for everybody in there, something to resonate with everyone. And so, if you guys have not watched the reunion on HBO Max, I was teary-eyed. So
weren't we all?
Yeah. And I saw the closeness that you guys have and still have today. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We really forged a family. It happened right away. It wasn't even, it happened right away that we kind of fell in love with each other. Like right away. I loved those people so fast. We were, inseparable right away. We were with each other all the time. Alfonso bought a house. I bought a house down the street. We spent so much time together, even when we weren't working. And then, we were fast family, and we still are. I mean, I'm happy to say when I see everybody, we just fall back in where we were before. We trust each other. We love each other. I know that those people have my back. I know that they see me and they love me, and I'm good with them always, and they are my family. So it doesn't happen like that all the time.
It rarely happens that, even in real life, you don't get jobs where you really find, I was fortunate to find that when I worked with Brett almost 20 years ago, and that's why we still talk to this day. So definitely consider
it's special.
Brett part of my family.
That many people. And I think that's one reason it was with with Janet. I think that's why another reason it was it hit everybody so hard. It was difficult to be around for a while. I think it was difficult that that the negativity that was hovering for a long time. It was definitely it was like a huge weight lifted when she showed up, when she and Will got together for the first time in so long, and then when she and Daphne hugged, it just felt like it was like all the doves were released. It was just so good, It was like we all needed that because we were a family, and it was nice to all again be like, I've seen Janet over the years a few times, but I didn't know how much that stuff that was that awful rift was affecting me too, until everybody came together, and it just felt like, oh my God, this is right. Thank goodness. It just felt so good. It was so good to see her. It was so good to see everybody together and happy together. Oh, it was great.
Yeah, I think it was good for us too, to see.
I think so.
You guys make amends, because everyone loved her as a character. We, saw the rift happen, but there wasn't the story. Now we understand fully the context.
There's a lot.
Which is none of our business. Yeah, but
Yeah.
just to understand the context of it now and to know, like I said, life is too short. We have
Yes.
to, make amends with people, and we admit our wrongs, and we move on, and hopefully, in me watching that, learning that, what, don't wait too long to
It's true.
address those things.
We were lucky
Get
that
in
we
front
were
of it.
able to. I'm glad we were able to. I wish James had been there and been a part of that. He would have really appreciated that too.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that they came together, that they decided to do that. Like you said, life is short. This is what we have. There's no need for this. There's no room for this other stuff. You got to do what you can to make it okay.
Yeah, and I that's how I try to live my life. Is if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I never do anything, with an intention to anyone, but it's really, if I do, I want to make amends. I want to straighten it out and move forward. So I applaud you guys for definitely Will and Janet really, mending that, and then, healing the family.
Yeah, it took a lot. It took a lot. It took a lot of bravery, I think, for them to do that too. And yeah, I commend them as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to move on because we could talk about that all day, I'm sure. But I definitely want to move into talking about some of the things that you're working on currently and things you've been doing since you left Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You spent 6 years with them.
Yes.
And then, that's a long time to be, that close and day in and day out with someone, with a group of people, and then move into a new journey. So what was that like for you?
Which part? Leaving that or getting to the other part?
Well, transitioning to like right after the show. I know you had some great films that we consider like cult classics, like Major Payne and
Right.
Class Act and like stuff like that. So
Yeah. Well, those I actually did Class Act and Major Payne during the run of Fresh Prince on our break. Those were some things. I did some other things afterward, but it wasn't that long afterward that and I did some television, and actually did a show with Janet, with Dennis Leary, called The Job. But I also created a show. I co-wrote, co-created, co-starred in a show called Lush Life with Lori Petty, that Yvette Lee Bowser of Living Single, the creator of Living Single, co-created with us and executive produced. And it wasn't that long after Fresh Prince, I guess, that things started shifting. I mean, right away with that, with creating and writing. And I did start, a friend of mine pushed me to get into a writing class, and I with a particular instructor. And so I said, okay, I'll go. She really, really wanted me to go take this course. And so I did. And he was incredible. The class was great. And I realized how much I wanted to write, how much I loved it. And I'll tell you, when I stopped Fresh Prince, it was difficult. Like I said before, we were family. Now, I was an only child. And my dad was in my life, but he was all over. He wasn't like a dad. He wasn't home like a dad. So James Avery was very much like a dad, like James Evans on Good Times and the dad on Brady Bunch were like my dads growing up. And then as an adult, all of a sudden I had James Avery, who used to call me daughter. He didn't call me Karen till the day he died. He called me daughter. And I loved it. And he treated me that way. He treated me like a daughter in a lot of ways. And I loved it. And I had suddenly, I as an only child, growing up an only child on the show, I suddenly had siblings. I had a brother and a sister, and Will was my cousin, but he was also like very much like a brother, or a really, a tight cousin. And I didn't grow up with any of that. But for those 6 years on the show, I had all of this. I mean, I had this family. And when the show ended, it was It was for me, it was a hard separation. I didn't realize it at first, that it was really affecting me. And then it hit me. It's funny. I just mentioned this to somebody recently, but I went to school. One of the people I went to school with was Lenny Kravitz, and Lenny's mom, Roxy Roker, had been on the Jeffersons for like 11 years, I think. And I don't know if that was why I bumped into him after the show had gone off. And Lenny was like, well, he's asking me how I was and stuff. And then he's like, no, but really, how are you? How are you now? And it felt to me, it hit me like it was pointed, like, how are you since the show's gone off? Are you really okay? And I don't know if he meant all that, but that's how it hit me. That's how it landed. And it was the first time I felt like I had been truly confronted with the question. And so it was the first time it really hit me. And I realized I'm having a hard time with this, it was 6 years. I was there, just about every day. Weekends you're doing press, and the summer you're trying to do other jobs, but you're doing press, and you still have that connection. So that was hard. And I started to make my way, but when I found the writing, I found something I just started spending my days just writing all the time, but I didn't talk to a lot of people about it because I think I thought, as far as wanting to be a writer, I think I was afraid people wouldn't take me seriously, especially having been an actress my whole life and played a character that wasn't exactly who you'd think of as a novelist. So that was, in terms of the transitioning, it was an odd time. I was in acting workshops. I was still auditioning, but I had discovered writing, and I kept a lot of it kind of private, that was something I really wanted to do. It would be years later before, and it would be somebody nudging me forward and saying, you need to write a book, and somebody in a position to get my book out to people. That it would take that for me to finally let everyone know that this is what I want to do.
Wow. And sometimes that's something that I think about when we are in our different seasons of life. There's times where you think about, and I just had a conversation earlier today about this, in my 20s, I thought, going up the ladder and getting these titles and going, moving my career forward. And I had a director title at, age 26, 27. And I'm like thinking, oh, wow, I'm going to make it. I'm going to go, I've been to the Olympics. I've done this. I've done that. Like, I know that I can write my own ticket. And then it just hit me like these anxiety attacks and things were happening and the stress of it all. Yeah. And I started realizing that, okay, my life, my identity is tied up in these titles and in who I think I am and not who I really am. And it was kind of a wake-up call for me to say, okay, you got to get back to center. And I think what I'm hearing from you is saying, okay, this is a huge shift in my life. This is who I've, been for so long, and people know me as an actress. And I understand that trepidation of stepping into another role and, thinking, what are people going to think if I do this and do that? And I'm still kind of in that season, but I don't care anymore. I'm just moving out of that. And I love that you kept it to yourself, because sometimes when we're in those seasons, we have to protect.
I think I had to protect it. Mm-hmm. I think, but I want to say something, because you just said you dealt with anxiety. Mm-hmm. When I left the Fresh Prince and when I was doing other stuff, somewhere along the line, when I was auditioning, I started having a horrible stage fright. Go figure. It was like, For years, you're getting up in front of a live audience every week. I mean, and mind you, I got it sometimes on Fresh Prince. I got it the first time we shot, and then sometimes, like I remember in the 6th season, there was a show we were doing, and I was so nervous. And I don't know, I'm like, this is the 6th season. What's going on? Why am I freaking out? And then, then the next show I was fine, and mostly I was fine.
Did you dissect why that was happening? Did you think about what could be the root cause of it?
I have my ideas of what I think it is or was. It's one thing when you don't have anything to lose, when you don't have anywhere to fall, right? And you just keep going. But when you're up here and everyone's looking at you and going, well, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
That can be a tremendous pressure. And I think for me, it was. I think I would go into auditions. I would have worked like crazy on it. I knew what I was going to do, and I would get in to the room, and something in me, was just afraid that everyone was going to be looking at. One of the first places it happened, actually, says it all, was I was auditioning for friends of mine, producer and director team, friends of mine, who are real champions, of me. Like, they're great. They're great. And I've never worked with them before, although I had worked with I had met them because I worked with the wife of one of them. And I had a great experience. And so now they had a project that I was right for. And they were so excited because they wanted to cast me. They were like, it's our friend and she's perfect for the role. And she's been on this show, which is only good for us. And this is great. This is perfect. And I was excited. As my friends, it's a great part. It's a good project. And I showed up. I think I did the first audition maybe without them, and I was fine. But I came in, and when I had to audition for the two of them, I choked. And that wasn't something I did. And I just completely choked and left with my tail between my legs. And I was like, I can't believe I just blew. It was like it was handed to me and I blew it. And that wouldn't be the last time I would have an experience like that. And I think it was because everything was right there in front of me. It was so easy that I just sabotaged it. I was just this part of me that was like, oh my God, you're going to mess up. You're going to mess up. You're not going to be what everyone expects you to be, or they expect you to be great. And how can you be as good as they expect? I think all of these things were probably going on someplace in me, not consciously, but they were going on enough to stop me from being able to do my work. And, it was really a drag. This went on with a lot of stuff. I ended up working with an acting coach finally she recommended beta blockers finally, as just because it stops the fight or flight thing that happens, so that because I would literally be in an audition and I would all of a sudden, I'd be sitting in the corner on the wall, on the ceiling, looking down, watching the whole thing as opposed to being in it. And so the beta blockers actually, started to help me get into the experience of getting through an audition, being present, not having that thing happen. And then I only used them probably 2, maybe 3 times, but it was enough just for me to feel myself be present again and be like, oh, you're fine, Karyn. You're okay. You're okay. You know what's going on. You're okay. And then I got past it, but it was a devastating period. It was a really difficult period. It's not like I have a million roles to go up on. There weren't like a ton of roles for people, for women like me at the time. And there I was going in and blowing quite a few of them. But I'm okay now.
Yes, you are. And I can definitely relate to that. And I know the feeling. And having stepped out and started a business not once but twice, it's really that first time I gave up on myself too soon.
Yeah.
And, looking back on that, I lost a lot of time and I was beating myself up about it. And I could have done this and I could have done that. And like you said, having those opportunities just handed to you and the self-sabotage, because your mind is working overtime thinking about all the things that can go wrong,
right,
instead of all the things that can go right.
Right. It's a lot of perfectionism too, just really thinking. I mean, that can be completely, paralyzing, trying to be perfect, trying to be what everybody wants, trying to be and you're supposed to, everyone's expecting this of me, all that stuff. And I have to say that that's one thing that whole experience has taught me, because now I go to schools and conferences and I speak at things all the time. And, I used to always have to have a script. Often I don't have anything anymore. I just, I've gotten to where I feel a lot more like it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. People are gathered here or people there at the audition because we're all in it together, and everybody wants, for the most part, people want it to go well and they want you to do well. There will be people that don't want you to do well. And there is a situation where I felt some people didn't want me to do well. And once, that actually haunts me. And I think that also has a little bit of something to do with, it's almost like, it's like in school with the kids that hate you and judge you. And it's like, you could have all these friends and then you've got like 3 girls over there who are like, and that's all you can think about.
Yeah.
My husband always says it's like the picket fence. You've got one broken picket and all you can think of is that one, and everything else is just like, you're great. You're doing a good job. We're here for you. All the support. One person that's looking at you going, it's like on the comments on, anything in the internet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, you got to let that stuff go.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm like, are we twins right now? Because at our birthdays, I noticed we're like very close. So like this Libra energy is happening. But I was just like, my goodness, like that has been kind of my story of, worrying about, okay, who's hating on me now and who's going to try this and who's going to try that. But, I had to tell myself, when I used to read the Bible every day. But when I was younger, and there was these scriptures that I would always focus on. And even when people tried to sabotage me, there was one thing that I know is that what God has for you is for you.
Yeah.
Nobody can stop it. It doesn't matter how hard they try. And they may try to get in the way. They may be successful at, one thing or another. But in the end, one is all things work together for the good.
Yes.
And then what's for you is for you. So if that's the case, no matter what obstacle or roadblock comes in your path, it will all work together for the good. And that was something that I have to continually remind myself of. And one of my good friends says, let the haters do their job. Don't do it for them.
Exactly. There's another quote. I want to see if I can find it for you really quickly. I know it's crazy, but I'm see if my phone will hold up over here. There's a quote too that reminds me a little bit of what we were talking about, that has always struck me and meant a lot to me. I don't know if you've heard it before. Hold on a second. It's attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it's actually Marianne Williamson. And it's about shining. Here we go.
Yeah, the one, who are we not to allow ourselves out, that one. Yeah. Go ahead and read it. Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So, well, and this is part of it. I don't know, this isn't the whole thing, but this is part of it. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And there's more to the quote that basically goes on. Yeah, as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And it goes on as well to talk about, like, basically, like, who are you to dim your light for others? I mean, I think a lot of us also, there's this thing of feeling there's some part of us subconsciously that actually knows we've got greatness It's like you're saying what God intends for you, that's yours. And there's a part of us that I think that knows and is, if we're fearful of falling short, but we're also fearful of shining too bright. I think there's something subconsciously that keeps us, because of haters and because of people are going to have a problem and they're going to see us shine, they're going to want to bring us down. And yet when we shine, not only are we doing what we're supposed to be and we're doing, but we are also giving other people permission to do the same. We're telling everybody, like, shine your light. We're saying that for everyone. It encourages everybody to do the same. I think that quote always rings with me. I think we tend to sometimes dim ourselves and sabotage ourselves also to not shine so brightly. And, but we have to.
We do. And that's a perfect segue into the fact that you are shining, and you are shining a light on hidden figures in Black history. We so very often hear about the same people every month, every February. They, bring out Dr. King and who, these amazing individuals who have changed the course of history for us.
Yes.
And not just for us, but for the world.
Yes.
But there are some that we don't even think about. I mean, I was telling my mom, I said, every Black person from slavery forward is like Black history. Like, there's someone who had to create a mop, someone who had to create a dustpan. They didn't give them tools to go out and do the stuff they had to do.
That's the thing, yeah. Yeah, you hear people often say, when they find out about this wealth of inventions that came from Black people, and people are like, oh, a Black person didn't invent that. You're just saying that. And it's like, well, no, it not only is it true, but think about it. Think about it for a minute.
Think about it.
Think about the limited resources, but all of the responsibility and the duties that Black people had. They had so much they had to do, but they had limited resources. They had to think outside the box all the time. Mm-hmm. So of course they were inventing like crazy.
Right. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Thank you very much. There you go. I mean, that's it. And so it always kills me when people say that. I was like, what did you think about what you just said? But yeah, I grew up. My mother was a librarian, and I spent so much time in the library. But then as an adult, my mother still was working in the library, and she was heading the Black Resource Center at the particular library. And I was an adult now, but she would call me and tell me stories about people in Black history that she heard about, that she, were just little known stories. And she told me the story one day of Henry Box Brown, an enslaved man who literally mailed himself to freedom in a box, had a box built, got inside, had it nailed shut, postage applied, and sent from Virginia to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it was a 27-hour journey. He went by wagon, boat, train, arrived across state lines. And when they opened it, since there were no slaves in Pennsylvania, or in Philadelphia where he was, he was a free man. And he had escaped slavery through this incredible ingenuity. And I just couldn't believe this story was true. And I was just blown away by it. But then I was blown away by the fact that I had never heard it, and none of my friends had heard it. And I thought, this just makes no sense. Like, why don't we know this? Why aren't we taught this? And I wanted to bring his story to kids. I thought such a great story for a picture book, And then my mom would tell me more stories. I would uncover more stories. And I decided I just wanted to have a series of books about real people in Black history that you don't hear about. Incredible, empowering stories that teach kids what they're capable of, and show them that these tremendous obstacles are actually opportunities for greatness. And so I started Sweet Blackberry. And our first story was the journey of Henry Box Brown, about Henry Box Brown. And we did them because self-publishing wasn't as easy at the time. as it is now. So I did them as these short animated films with a single narrator. And so Alfre Woodard came on board, and she narrated the journey of Henry Box Brown. And then I did Garrett's Gift about the inventor Garrett Morgan, who invented, among other things, the traffic signal. Queen Latifah did the narration for that. And they're like picture books come to life, light narration with this one person kind of telling you a story. And then Chris Rock did Janet Collins, the first Black prima ballerina. And Lawrence Fishburne did Bessie Coleman, and the first Black female aviator, whose story is amazing. And I'm happy to say, this is the book actually right here. I'm happy to say that Flying Free is our first, it just came out. It's our first hardcover picture book. The rest of were films. And then we made that one as well into a book. So that's just really been an incredible accomplishment. We have the story of Garrett Morgan coming. It's called Saving the World. Oh God, it has a long title. It's a little different from Garrett's Gift, but that comes out in the spring as well as a hardcover picture book. So I'm really excited about those.
Yeah, you're doing some amazing stuff. And I was, reading up on you and just catching up on all the things that you've been doing. And you've also written your own book.
Yeah, How High the Moon.
Yeah.
I wrote, this is just over here. I've got my whole setup here for you. But I have How High the Moon is my first novel, which was really exciting. And like I said earlier, I had somebody in my life, a friend of mine who knew me. My friend Mark, actually, we met when he was a journalist and I had just finished Fresh Prince. And so he caught me after the show while I was writing every day. So he knew me that way. And so we were friends for a while. We lost track of each other, got back in touch. We actually ran into each other at a party. And turned out he was a literary agent. And I just didn't think of anything for my writing. I just was like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. He had been in publishing and I knew that, but I thought this is great. Good for you. And then he wanted to hang out one day and wanted me to drop by the office, but instead he had been following what I was doing with Sweet Blackberry. And like I said, he knew me as a writer, and the Sweet Blackberry, I write all of the stories. And he said, I think you need to write a novel. And, here I am not writing, feeling guilty about it every day because, I'm a mom and I'm trying to do other things. I'm working with Sweet Blackberry, but the writing that I wanted to do, I just wasn't giving the time to. And I was always carrying this quiet, private guilt about it. And here somebody comes along and sees right through it and just says, I think you need to write a novel. And with that vote of confidence, I pitched him a couple of ideas and he really loved one of them. I went with it and it became How High the Moon. And next thing you know, we were taking the book out and having a bidding war, and all of a sudden I was in this whole new world of writing, and it's been amazing. It's been incredible and exciting and liberating, and I feel like this quiet, private person who was afraid to share this, it's just changed me so much. It's given me a whole new confidence in myself now that I'm able to just be true to that and say, this is what I do. Yes, it's not perfect. I'm still learning. But look what I feel really good. Like I did this and I don't know what I'll do next. I'm working on my second one right now and some other projects as well. But I feel like me, it's great. And it's okay to do different things. I think it's so easy for us to think, well, I'm supposed to be an actor and I'm supposed to just go from here as an actor to get better. I'm supposed to do all of this, but sometimes our interests change too. Sometimes who we are changes. I don't need to live by the decisions that a 17-year-old girl made about what she wanted to do with her life. I'm not, I change, I evolve, I move in the world. And so this is where I am today. Who knows where 10 years, maybe I'll be singing a different tune. I'll be I'll be a cellist.
Well, I took piano lessons as an adult. So
Good.
It was my dream to take my poems and put them into songs and things. So I mean,
I love that.
Yeah, I didn't make it far. I could play Thank You Lord and stuff like that. But I had a question about, so you're a mom, you said, I think you have 2 teenagers.
Yes.
And one about to go to college pretty soon and all of that stuff. So did you write your book? Had you been working on it over the years, or was it something that you waited until after? Were you busy raising kids? What was
it wasn't like I had the book just, there's a story I just want to tell it that I got to get to one day. It wasn't like that. I wanted to, my mother grew up in South Carolina, a little town outside of Charleston, South Carolina in the 40s. And to hear my mom talk about it, she had the greatest childhood. Oh, they had so much fun. They had the farm and, all of her siblings, and everything was just so great and peachy. My mom was always very positive. And it took me a while to finally say, well, wait a minute. The 40s, the South, you grew up in the Jim Crow South, Mom. You got to tell me something more. You got to tell me, how was it such a great, happy childhood? What was it really like? Was it ever dangerous? Were you frightened? What was it? What was your life like? And so I wanted to kind of step into her shoes and create a combination of myself at 11 years old and my mother, and be there in the 1940s in a little town outside of Charleston, and see what it was like, and see how, and because she genuinely had a good childhood. I wanted to see how that happened. I wanted to see why that was. And so I created this story, How High the Moon. The protagonist is Ella, a little girl who lives with her grandparents and her cousins in this town. And her mother is up in Boston trying to be a jazz singer. Or she is a jazz singer up there. And she idolizes her mom. Her mom is Black. Her grandparents are Black. Her cousins are Black. And Ella is really light and gets teased about the color of her skin and called a zebra. And she doesn't know who her dad is. She can't get straight answers about it. And so she's wondering if maybe he is white. And what does that mean for her, living in where she does at the time that she does? And she gets the opportunity to go see her mom. And she learns some unexpected things about her mom while she visits her up in Boston. And she also learns about how different things are for Black people in Boston than they are down in South Carolina. It sees a whole different world. And when she goes back to South Carolina, she finds out that a good friend of hers, George Stinney, has been arrested. He's been accused of murdering 2 little white girls. And this character is based on the real person, George Stinney Jr., who, for people who don't know, George Stinney Jr. was the youngest person ever executed in the United States. At 14 years old, he was put in the electric chair at 14 years old. He was so small they had to sit him up on top of books because he wasn't tall enough to reach the headpiece. He was accused of killing and convicted of killing 2 little white girls, which, many years later, decades later, after he had died, they would retry the case and realize that it had indeed, the initial case trial had been a sham, and they would throw it out and he'd be exonerated. But this was too late. This is after George had already been executed. And I would come across George and his story often when researching Sweet Blackberry. And I'd see his face, this mugshot, this little boy. And I knew about his story. My friends didn't know about the story. Nobody knew about it, but it wasn't an empowering or inspiring Sweet Blackberry story. So How High the Moon turned out to be the perfect place to bring George's story, because he lived he lived in the 40s in a little town outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Not the same one as my mother, but not that far away. And so it made sense to bring him into the story and have an opportunity to tell a little bit about him to people, so he's not entirely forgotten. And so people, it just scratches the surface. And if anyone wants to, they can look a little deeper and find out more about what happened and the injustice that he faced, because it's important we don't forget.
And here, the thing about that, I'm pretty sure I've heard that story before. When you start talking about him sitting on the books, I like, it rung a bell to me. And the fact that that story sounds so similar to a story that could happen today.
I know. Yeah.
You know.
And when I was writing it, I'm sure I was affected by the events of the time of today. I was opening up the computer or turning on the news just about every day, and another Black man or boy was being killed while I was writing. And when I first was writing it, George was a background story. He was a memory of somebody else. And then I ended up having to bring him to the foreground and make him a more important character, a more prominent character in the story. And I'm glad I did. But it's very hard when you're writing and these things are happening around you not to want to shout and scream and put it into your work, you know? So, yeah, so I'm glad he found his way into this story.
Yeah, I'm glad he did too. And it kind of reminds me of Lovecraft Country, where they kind of put Emmett Till's story into the actual show. And I thought that was, and Tulsa and some other
Tulsa,
events.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was really
but it's
cool.
Great because it's like, so many people were like, I didn't know about Tulsa, until Lovecraft.
Or I knew about Tulsa. I was very aware about of Tulsa and the fact that
it was Watchmen actually that did the Tulsa that everybody started saying they hadn't heard about. It was Watchmen.
What
right?
I didn't know about Tulsa was that the government in some way was like, because the planes that flew overhead, I think were government planes that bombed. I have to double check that to make sure. I don't want to be putting out false information, but from what I remember or what I recall of that, there may have been some government assistance in that. Yeah, and there's another story about in Arkansas about this. I think it was like an all boys school or something where they had all Black boys, and they ended up setting the place on fire, and all the boys were killed. I mean, there's some. I mean, this country has been known for some treacherous things. And to see how that feeling and sentiment is bubbling up again.
We haven't dealt with it.
Yeah. And I think that everything that's happening needs to happen.
Yes.
There has to be a reckoning. There has to be some justice. There has to be some way of getting the truth out there. And people don't want to face these types of truths that, we didn't do that. And, Antifa stormed the building. I'm like, are you serious? So, it's just a lot. I don't want to get too political with you, but yeah, it's just, the truth has to come to light.
Yeah, if we have to deal with these things, and we can't, if we whitewash it, if we start eliminating things from our history books, or, picking and choosing what stories we tell, and we don't deal with how horrendous some of these things were, because it's just uncomfortable, but we still continue to have these little, like, ugly little paper cut little things going on, because we have, like, we've been okay for so long with having Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben on our labels, because it's kind of like, oh, well, there's this kind of like, I can't believe they still have that on there attitude, which is like, like, we still have this attitude with women with not having equal pay. We get mad. Women should have the same pay as men. We should be storming the Capitol over that.
Right.
We shouldn't be just like going, it's just not right. That's not getting us anywhere. And as long as we keep doing that and we don't get to where we are now, which is, we've got a generation of kids right now. My daughter's one of them who have no tolerance for this stuff. They're just like, are you crazy? What? Like, they're looking at like Aunt Jemima and going, huh? Like, oh, no. That comes off. Like they won't tolerate these things. Thank goodness. Because we've become very just
desensitized. And I think it's because in our minds, it's just the way it was. And I think like your daughter is a great example, but a lot of kids don't understand what that means and what that meant historically.
Well, and the ones that do, the ones that do, though, they have no tolerance for it. Mm-hmm. But yes, a lot of people don't even get it.
Yeah, and that's my challenge is how do we begin to help our children, because the past, I mean, this stuff was so long ago for them, and it wasn't that long ago for us, maybe, and definitely not my mom or your mom,
Right, so, but education is the key.
Yeah.
Education is the key.
I could talk about education gaps all day. I could talk about...
and that's one of the things with the Sweet Blackberry stories that I would love to be able to do is simply by telling these stories, introducing children at a really young age to the accomplishments that so many people have made to our everyday life. I think it helps, not only does it help Black children see themselves as, these contributions that have been made and what they're capable of. It makes all children recognize what they are capable of because they see these hurdles that they overcame, right? But on top of it, it helps children who aren't Black and brown look at their neighbors and see the accomplishments that people that look like them made too, right? So all together, these children are coming up and the landscape of race is different for them if they have an appreciation of these things. These are things that are it's not like, oh, the history books just kind of forgot them. No, they're being deliberately kept out of the books. And that is changing how people view themselves and their history and their ancestors and their own capability as they go into the world. Because they're not seeing that they accomplished things. They're being told certain propaganda that goes in, that creates who they are. On the cover, on the beginning of the Sweet Blackberry website, if you go to the sweetblackberry.org, we have a clip. We talk a little bit about Sweet Blackberry. In the very beginning of that clip, we talk about the Dolly test. And I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am.
You are. In the Dolly test, for people who don't know, is they would give little Black kids, 2 dolls, a black doll and a white doll, and ask them which is the good doll, which is the bad doll, which is the pretty doll, which is the ugly doll. And you see time and time and time again, little Black children, always pointing to the black doll as the bad doll, the ugly doll, the white doll is the good doll, the pretty doll. I mean, one of the clips that I show with the Dolly test, because it started back in the late 30s, but they started doing these things, but they've done them, on and on over the decades. And there's one with Anderson Cooper on CNN, and he's doing it with a little girl. And she's pointing to her brown skin, and she's saying, I don't like brown. It's yucky. I don't know why, but it is. And she must be 4 years old and maybe 5. And this little girl is learning to hate herself, to hate how she looks. And she doesn't know why or where the messages are coming from. And I think we have to understand they are little, and they are soaking up all of the messaging that they're getting through our society, not just the media. Well, the media is a huge part of it, but all of the messaging all through society is telling them these things. And we need to do all that we can to work to undo this, not just to not do this, but to undo this damage. We need to work hard, and we can't allow people to, we just need, that's the active work I think that we all need to be doing. And that's one of the areas that I think Sweet Blackberry is helpful in bringing these stories to kids.
Yeah. And we actually had a reporter here locally do that test like last year.
Oh,
And it was the same result. And
it's horrible.
I do see it getting better with, when we're always talking about melanin popping and all this stuff. And,
Yeah,
people are
people are
starting
trying.
to appreciate it more and more. But, it's so funny that, the thing that people claim to not like about us the most are all the things that they want to emulate. They
Yeah.
want it for themselves. And that's true in a lot of senses, not just in a racial sense, if you will, but there's something that people will point out about you and they'll talk about it or, try to make you feel bad about it, but it's something internally they really want for themselves.
Yes.
So once we understand our power and our gifts and what we have, we're the only people who don't know our power.
Right. Well, I think
Everybody
that's
else knows.
exactly it. And then that's why it's important to just stay true. Tell the truth, be the truth. You feel something you know is right, you go after that. You do that. And don't worry about people that will, all the naysayers and the people will try to cast doubt. And that's not your business.
Right.
That's not for you to deal with. It's not for you to take to heart. If somebody wants to give you constructive criticism that you trust, that's very different. But all that other stuff is just noise and distraction, and you don't know what's fueling it. You just don't know what goes on in people and what's fueling it.
Right.
So you have to do
Intention
your
is
best.
very important. Yeah, intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground
Yes.
today, and I appreciate you taking the time. And is there anything next coming up for you? What's any passion projects or anything going
Well,
on?
I just, like I said, there is, in the spring right now I'm excited about the Bessie Coleman book, Flying Free. And then we have, our book about Garrett Morgan, Saving the World, that's coming out, in the spring. Very excited. It's beautiful illustrations from R. Gregory Christie, who's an award-winning children's illustrator, multi-award-winning children's illustrator, are just beautiful, breathtaking. I'm so excited. The books are both gorgeous. And so those are coming up. I did a movie with my family. I acted, called Sweet Thing. My husband is a filmmaker, and he directed it, and my kids are actually starring in it. I have a smaller role in it, but it's called Sweet Thing. And right before the pandemic, we were in festivals. We won an award in Berlin, and then the pandemic hit. And so all the festivals kind of went, "Ew." So we'll see what happens if they're able to pick that back up. It does look like the film's going to get distribution. So it's called Sweet Thing. I would just say keep an eye out for it when it does get distribution. Looks like it's happening. And right now I'm working, like I said, I'm writing some other things, and hopefully I'll have something to talk to you about and come back. Talk to you about something later.
Yeah, some very cool stuff going on. So where can people, I have it on the screen that they can go to Instagram to Sweet Blackberry, and I'm
Sure.
that's the handle for all of your social media.
You can also go to Karyn Parsons on Instagram. I'm at Karyn Parsons, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter. It's both Sweet Blackberry and Karyn Parsons on both. If you put my name in Sweet Blackberry, it'll pop up as one of the options. You usually can figure out which one. But all of our stuff is there. And then on the website, we have sweetblackberry.org for more information, and for purchasing Sweet Blackberry products as well.
Well, awesome. Is there also, hold on, I'm losing my train of thought here. Where to find you? Yes. Also, Sweet Blackberry is a nonprofit.
Yes.
So how can people donate?
Yes, we're a nonprofit organization. I always forget to mention that. It's terrible. But we really appreciate any help that you can give us. If you go to our website, sweetblackberry.org, there are donate buttons abounding all over the place. And we welcome any donation. That's how we're kept alive and functioning. So, and also if you think that you have a talent that could help us, we're not looking at this time for illustrators. I have a lot of people that are submitting that kind of stuff, or voice work. We're not looking for that, but we do need volunteers to help with things like the website and getting the word out to other people. If you can spread the word, tell somebody about us, and of course, monetary donations help us keep the lights on, if you will. Keep us going. So you can check us out there and see how you can help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miss Karyn. This has been an amazing experience for me to just sit down, talk to you, and learn more about everything that, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, and all the great things that have come out of, those peaks and valleys. So thank you so much for sitting down with me and having this conversation.
Thank you. It was good to talk with you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. This has been the season premiere of Succeeding Over All Roadblocks Lifecast. Please be sure, again, to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at SOAR Lifecast. And leave us a review and let us know how the show is going. And thank you again for watching. And until then, keep soaring.